The Anglo-Saxons were already building technically advanced and seaworthy vessels from about the 6th century, undoubtedly using some of the lessons learnt from the Romans who had only left some 100 years earlier. The burial mounds at Snape, and more famously Sutton Hoo, provide us with a picture of the kinds of ships they were capable of building. One of the biggest problems for the locals at the time were of course the Vikings, who had taken to marauding the south coast from areas they'd settled in East Anglia, Lincolnshire and Yorkshire, and this eventually led to the first recorded naval victory for the English in 897. The Vikings had been carrying out raids, attacking settlements as far west as the Isle of Wight, and King Alfred at the time, beginning to see the situation get out of hand, ordered 9 of his newly built longships, each one apparently an impressive, in fact incredibly impressive if you consider the time, 45 metres long, and with 30 oars on each side, and capable of carrying an additional 100 men to put a stop to things. The Anglo-Saxon chronicles, unfortunately, don't record exactly where the Viking raid in question was found. But it does tell us that 3 of the 6 Viking ships were already beached, so the crews could load any plunder they'd managed to get their hands on. Trapped, the 3 other Viking ships standing guard at the estuary mouth were attacked, and 2 were quickly overwhelmed by the larger English vessels. However, their size turned to disadvantage as the tide ebbed and all 9 of them ran aground. The Vikings, though, as we all know, not one to avoid a fight, counter-attacked the smaller of the 2 groups of stranded English ships. But the size, which had been a problem just earlier, proved too much for the Vikings, and 120 of them were killed in the assault, the Saxons losing half as many defenders. The battered raiders made off with their 3 remaining longships, as Alfred's men would have to wait until the tide turned before being able to refloat. The encounter had been a bruising one for the Vikings, as 2 of the 3 ships came ashore and the crews were captured. Only 1 ship made it around the coast back to East Anglia. It is because of this small coastal action, and mainly because someone bothered to write it all down, who just incidentally happened to be the king's cousin, that Alfred is sometimes referred to as the founder of the navy. It seems after Alfred, the so-called king's ships his successors controlled went through periods of growth and contraction, and at one high point King Edgar is believed to have been able to muster together as many as 1,000 ships. But fleets of this size were difficult to manage, but more importantly, expensive to maintain. Besides, almost all of the ships, apart from a handful, were owned by nobles, merchants and fishermen, and they often had better things to do than help the king. Gathering the Navy Royal together was as much a political act as it was a military one.